Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains, episode number 937. It is a Tuesday night special. This is for the 2nd of January, 2024. And we're back. We decided to move the show schedule for last night to tonight because of the holiday. And I see some people waiting to get on the call here, so let's bring them all in. For those that don't know, this is the pre-show, the magical, marvelous time of the program where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we say really, really outrageous things. And since we have not been live since last year, maybe it's time to say something outrageous.
That
Bill,
should
got
be our
anything
New Year's
outrageous for us here?
resolution, James. We'll say more outrageous things during the pre-show.
We should. It's been mellow here of late. It used to be a little more edgy. So maybe we can come up with something really, really outrageous this evening. We've got 7 minutes before we hit the TV and everything else. So 7 minutes.
So Eric, you're in charge of coming up with something outrageous.
Oh Lord. I mean, it's all rated R though.
Yeah,
it's got to be within certain boundaries.
Yeah.
Within boundaries here. This is a family show,
especially after 7.
Yeah. Good Lord. Oh, well, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, we're excited about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I got to make my reservations and my registration.
Yeah. I actually wouldn't mind having James involved here in the future. So
he's like booked out through 2026. You better get on his calendar now.
Yeah. But we're talking about Nashville next year, so it won't be too bad of a draft for him.
Nashville. Ooh.
Yeah. We're talking about it.
Nashville.
Yeah.
Nashville.
Just across the old border.
Yep. Been a whirlwind. We're like right at the top of the timing here for us because it's getting crazy and we're almost selling out. So it's been talking about adding things and people canceling, and I don't know why I do this to myself, but I do. So it's been good times.
Do y'all have the whole hotel or close to all the hotel there?
Last I talked, there was 30 rooms left. Our block is out. Like we've sold out our block of rooms.
They still had $119 rates today. What was the block rate?
Yeah, it's 119. I got them to add 5 rooms this morning. So don't wait. Yep.
James, can we delay the show by about 5 minutes? I'm going to be busy for the next 5 minutes.
You can multitask. Multitasking is a critical part of being successful in the weather enterprise.
Yeah, true that.
I have booked rooms while doing television. I have booked rooms while stopped at a stoplight, not while driving. You can do this.
I couldn't get a friends and family rate. I looked earlier, so that probably.
Which hotel is this?
It's a Fairfield Inn in North Dakota. I'll tell you in about 5 minutes.
Well,
it's a Marriott in Fort Worth.
I was going to say I'm so confused right now.
I'm very confused.
I
got to get one of those last 5 rooms before they go away.
It's a DFW Marriott next to the Texas Motor Speedway.
Bill, you ever been to Tarrant County, Texas before?
Mm-hmm. Even been there on the Amtrak before.
What were you doing in Tarrant County, Texas?
Riding the Amtrak.
So did you stop in Tarrant County or did you just go through?
I actually did a crazy thing where I flew into Love, rode the little light rail like so far, and then jumped on a train and went to the station in Fort Worth and then got on the Amtrak to go to Ardmore. Seems like I drug Brian Peters on this trip. It was like planes, trains, and automobiles. At about 11 o'clock at night, he wasn't even speaking to me anymore.
But you've never been to Tarrant County as a destination. You're just passing through.
Yeah, just passing through. I don't think I've ever stopped or
Oh,
stayed there. Yeah. So, except for to hang around in the train station for a couple hours.
Okay.
we should
Right.
make a trip out of
Tarrant County is I would have lived there if I would have known better. We
Yeah.
lived in Collin County, and drove North Central Distress Way
Mhm.
into Dallas every day. And knowing
Yeah.
what I know now, I would have lived in Tarrant County. It's a little slower pace, a little just better quality of life, if you ask me. But that's just me, just me.
When was the last time you were there?
It was before COVID. It's been a few years.
Okay.
It's like I need to get out more. We had
Yeah.
some meet. I remember Kim was there. It was some kind of weather. It's always a weather meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember Kim was there, and but it was before COVID, so it's been over 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. It's crazy the amount of people that have moved into the north part of Tarrant County, really from California and parts of New York. Like you drive down I-35 now, and it's just as bad as Dallas. I mean, it's absolutely
Woo!
packed with people.
Oh Lord!
And the highway system is, of course, 5 years behind. So they're trying to build it, but it's going to take a while.
Goodness. Well, um, let's see. We got James A. We got Jen.
Well, Happy New Year.
We know that Neil is out. Kim has child care sickness issues. She hopes to join late. We know Troy is out. He'll be out for a couple of weeks. Hopefully, Rick Smith can join us.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be a good
Um,
episode for Rick. He really helped us last year on some stuff.
yeah, he should be here in a minute. Again, Rick, just so you'll know, we can't start the show until the top of the hour in like 40 seconds. We hit here comes Rick. We hit the TV side at the top of the hour, and that's when we start the actual show here. James A., what are you doing working? I thought you had an agent where you got off 3 weeks at Christmas and New Year's. What's the deal here?
Yeah, I usually come back and work New Year's Eve, let the younger folks on the staff have their holiday. I
Go
party
down and
like
getting
it's
some.
six. What's that?
They go down and get in bar brawls and that kind of stuff.
I think so. I party
Yeah.
like it's 16.99.
And that would be a great show title if only the show were rolling. All right. So welcome to our television viewers. Let me roll the tracks here and let's get this thing started. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Ooh. How many weather shows have Bill Curtis opening up the show with "You're kind of a big deal"? Well, that's what we've got here. This is Weather Brains, the weekly show that's all about weather. Episode number 937. This is for the 2nd of January, 2024. It's a new year. James Adelot, Happy New Year. How you doing?
I am doing well. Happy New Year to the whole Weather Brains gang. And 2024, we're ready to cast off 2023. And I know Rick is with me and hoping that we set no more January tornado records in Oklahoma.
Well, so Rick, will you? Yes or no?
No, I don't
No.
know. I hope not. No is my vote, just along with James. But yeah, it's interesting. I put on chat and sent out to the media today our year-end tornado stats for Oklahoma, and I think a lot of people would not think last year was super busy, but it actually, well, it was above average. We had 74 tornadoes in Oklahoma, 57 is the average, and poor McLean County, which is the county I live in, took the brunt of it. So yeah, it's I'm hoping we've wiped the spreadsheet clean for 2024, and we're going to keep it blank as long as we can. Sorry, Eric.
No, I'm fine with it. My house. I live in that corridor just east of Norman, and three times last year I was within a quarter mile of my house. So I'm good. It could stay out of central Oklahoma as much as possible.
Yep. All right, Jen of the Arctic Circle, the frozen tundra. How cold is it?
It is 30, what is it right now? 30 something, 31 right now. Happy New Year, guys. I'm here to keep you all straight. Hopefully Kim will come back me up later. But yeah, things are good. I worked quite a bit this holiday season, but I managed to work in some breaks. We got a little bit of snow, and we have another chance coming in Saturday. So that's going to be interesting to see. And Cece's here to say Happy New Year to you guys as well.
Cat. If you listen, most people listen. You need to watch. You need to watch just once to experience all of the visual elements of this show. But no, Jen, how many snow maps have been shared across social media in the last 2 weeks?
Oh my gosh, endless, ridiculous. And we're very quiet, and I'm hoping it stays that way. You guys are hoping no January tornadoes. I'm hoping no January snow, but we do have a chance up here. Saturday. It's a little iffy, but we'll see what happens. But I'm taking it so far in stride.
So another one just came in. I probably had 24 of these today. Somebody by the name of Chelsea Alexander saying 2024 will begin with an Arctic freeze coming at the end of the month. If temperatures get this low, I would expect power outages. Prep now. And let's see, this is 600. This is not 384. This is not 384. 672 hour output.
Oh man.
From the CFS, not the GFS, the CFS. And I went over to Chelsea Alexander's page, and it's mostly half nude photographs of Chelsea. So apparently she's learned the trick of getting followers and engagement. It's not the semi-clothed photographs. It's posting that type of weather map online. So there you go. But Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest here. Enough of this nonsense.
Yeah, James. Tonight we're gonna break the show into two halves. We've got a great first half and a second half coming up after the recorded segments at about 8 o'clock. But first tonight up, we've got Eric Fox. He's a retired Army non-commissioned officer, background in special operations weather. He currently does some work for Weather Nation. He's one of their field meteorologists and correspondents. He's also a part-time police officer, and he is founder and director of the National Storm Chaser Summit. Eric, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
We enjoyed visiting with you during the telethon back in November, and I was really excited to hear a lot about what you're doing. But tell us a little bit about you first. I hit some highlights there in the bio that you gave me, but talk about how that role in the military either was founded from a love for weather or just created a love for weather for you.
Well, it was a combination of everything colliding together at one time in a perfect storm for me. I grew up in the Texas Panhandle. I'm an Amarillo brat, so back in the '90s, you can only imagine the amount of tornado outbreaks we had in the '90s in the Panhandle. So growing up in the '90s and '80s in the Panhandle, there was a meteorologist named Steve McCauley. I grew up with there, Channel 4 in Amarillo, and the way he really was on air. He taught along with presenting the weather, and I fell in love with it as a kid, just listening to him. And I'm like, oh wow, science! I love this. So I grew up. I was like, I'm going to be a meteorologist. I don't care what happens. I'm going to be a meteorologist. And so then I moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area when we were I think I was 12 or 13 when we moved, and I got into sports. I'm kind of a big guy. I mean, Rick knows me personally, so I'm a 6'6", 250-pound guy. So I ended up playing football here in Texas. So my first passion became football, and then weather. And I was going to go to school, play football, and then a little thing, 9/11 happened. So when 9/11 happened, I was like, okay, forget college. I'm going straight to the military, and that's what I did. Went to the military. Got into the infantry world, into the military, and we were in Afghanistan and one of my deployments, my second deployment. I went to Iraq first, then I went to Afghanistan. And they were having a lot of issues with units in the mountains with with wind along the mountains, right? And helicopters, they don't really go hand in hand. So the Army started doing some more weather stuff, localized, with, just basic, observation stuff, nothing too in depth. But I was already well and way to my meteorology degree. So I got to convert, right? So they sent me to school, and went to Fort Sill. Actually, the Army's weather school is actually at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which was great for me. I got some chasing in. And so I went to the Army weather school, and then we went back several deployments. And then I was hurt, unfortunately, on one of my deployments. I was medically retired, finished my degree in that time when I was hurt, and went from there. And Rob Sig, who owns Weather Nation, just kind of, and I got to shout out to Brett Adair. He's a good friend with Brett, got me with Rob Sig, and I was hired on with Weather Nation. But I still had a lot. I want to serve, right? I'm a public servant. I'm a servant, and so I decided to become a police officer. So I did a little bit of both. I was like, okay, I can be a reserve part-time police officer and still work in weather, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's pretty cool. Talk about Army Weather School, because I don't think we've ever dug into that. We've talked to Navy meteorologists and Air Force meteorologists, but I think this is our first opportunity to talk to an Army meteorologist. So talk about how weather school works.
Well, really, the Army's is based around field artillery, right? Very much like the Marines. It's as basic as you can get, just observation and making sure you get, air pressure, wind, uh, you know, a water droplet can affect artillery round. And so that's really what they focus on, is this mainly observations and very little forecasting. The only really forecasting that we could really get into was like wind vectors, right? And speeds. And so that's mainly what the Army does. It's not quite as in depth as the Navy's, because the Navy's, of course, theirs is, ocean and there's air, and it's just the only thing with us with air was helicopters, right? And there's no fixed wing aircraft in the Army, so it's very rudimentary, very easy to do. Just basically charting and putting stuff into computers. It was very basic, but that's why I did have to go outside to continue my education, because the Army is very basic with stuff. Our main thing was not crashing helicopters when we were in Afghanistan. And so it's like literally just taking a measurement and sending it out to who needs the information. And then a lot of that will go into the air crews to make decisions. And then a lot of times, being on the side of a mountain, you don't want to, the winds just change so often, especially in Afghanistan, because you got, you're talking 13, 14,000 foot peaks, and then you're at 9,000, that changes. And most helicopters can't fly that high. So a lot of that, wind affects them, air pressure affects it. So that's, really, we were experimental. We're not even really, the Army doesn't have this MOS particular. We were just a bunch of people that had the correct information, and they just stuck us into units and, with combat experience, just because they had to have it.
So you weren't working from some specialized center. You were in the field with the troops.
Yep. Yeah. That's the thing we were doing. I'm literally holding my arm out and giving them a wind speed, because that's the best information we had. They could do big synoptic scale overview, but the mountains just change the wind so much. They the last I checked, and I don't know what the later years were, but the early years, they were crashing anywhere to 3 to 5 helicopters just because of the change in winds in the mountains. And so you can't do that. It's unsustainable. So they were looking at ways to keep those helicopters in the sky. And so that's, they really made an investment in people, to help these ground units. Of course, me being already infantry background, it was an easy thing for me. It was combined 2 passions I had: serving, fighting for my country, and being able to do weather. It's absolutely amazing what I learned. And honestly, it goes into chasing a little bit, because you gotta have that mindset of situational awareness. And that's part of what I'm trying to teach at the summit, is situational awareness at all times, and keeping your composure and making decisions ahead of time. And really, I learned that from the Army. I learned that as being a police officer. You really, if you can combine the training that we put into what we do at chasing, and still be a public servant to Rick, it's like, if you're out there, you need to know not only what you're doing, how you're doing it, but how are you reporting it and being a great public servant to the people. And so, really, that's why when ChaserCon went away, that was my mission with ChaserCon. Excuse me, National Storm Chaser Summit, because I wanted that training I have to be able to be spread out. And how do you do that? How do you coordinate that? So that was all started from my days in the Army.
Well, I know I speak for the entire panel, and I thank you for your service to our country. It's truly amazing, especially when you stand yesterday, like, watching the football game out of the Rose Bowl. And, is that a B1 or a B2 what was that flew over the Rose Bowl yesterday too?
I
Since
believe that was
James ate a
a
lot.
B. Yeah, I believe that was a B2 that went
Yeah,
over there.
just gives you, just makes you proud to be an American, to know of all the incredible things. But, so many, you mentioned the frailty of the helicopter in these desert missions, and there's a history of that going back, of course, to the Iranian, hostages and under President Carter, all the way up, I guess, to Osama bin Laden. And that mission, didn't we lose a helicopter along the way in that
We
event?
did, but that one actually was not weather related. That one was a
Okay.
mechanical. Yeah, and that one, yeah. I mean, they were, training goes back to training on that. They prepared for that. And so
Yeah.
it just goes back to the scope of our military and how the training and the things that they do in this world is able to keep us safe. As a country, it's absolutely amazing how you really have 100 different things come together for one mission. And most people don't realize the planning and the training and the amount of preparation it takes for one mission. And it's like that across most of the military.
That is just spectacular. And so, all that is really cool. Now, I heard you mention that you continued your degree after your retirement. Talk about that. Maybe I heard that wrong, but explain that process for us.
Yes. So the Army had this program. It's some of it's through the Wounded Warriors, but the Army basically, what I did is I went to Embry-Riddle, and just did it online as much as I could. And then I did a little bit of Mississippi State, and just I was already in uh, um, TV meteorology. So really, it seems like everybody that's in TV right now is kind of going through Mississippi State. So I just went online, did some basic stuff. I had a lot of those hours already, so it was just getting through some of the minor stuff. And of course, I suck at math, so I did the easy way. But it just it was it was good. Just I'm still not done. I still tell myself I want to continue. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, really, what I'm doing now with Weather Nation, they're a really big supporter of me and trying to do what we're doing the right way, the correct way, and putting information on TV. They're a big supporter of what I'm doing and what we're doing as a program. So really, I'm focused on that right now. And then, of course, the summit. It's been a crazy year for me, not only from chasing, but from work and family. It's been one of those things. I want to get back to school, but I'm not quite done yet. So I gotta continue going through
So,
that avenue.
so does the Army promote this program, or is it kind of hard to find?
Uh,
Could there be any, soldiers out there right now that are listening that are maybe about to come up to retirement or whatever, and
yeah.
could go this route?
Yeah, the GI Bill. I tell you what, my program is a little different because I was wounded, right? So I had a wounded program where most of my stuff was paid through the VA, away from the GI Bill. Of course, we're not in combat anymore, so really, unless they've been prior wounded or something, you could probably go through those programs. But really, the GI Bill, I find that most schools that put on even OU, Mississippi State, Penn State, really anywhere you can get your meteorology degree, if you have your GI Bill, use it. If that's what I recommend now. And to me, there's actually, if you're still in the Army, there's school that's 100% paid for that you can go and get your basics, get your math, get your English, get everything you need out of the way while you're in, and then if you fail, trig 5 times, it won't be as expensive.
That's awesome.
I
Well,
speak from experience.
I know you're probably wondering why we're so far afield from the summit here, but we're going to get there. I
Yeah,
promise. We've
yeah.
fascinated. Talk about Weather Nation for a minute. I don't watch them enough, and I know they're doing some great stuff. And I just made a New Year's resolution to spend a little more time over there. Talk about the network and how it came to be and how it's working.
Yeah, I know there's a little bit. I can only speak from when I've been there. I started there in 2016, and I was there for a few months full time before I went back to police world. But um, Rob Sig bought it. I'm not really sure before. I know there was another aspect of it before. I'm not real clear on that. But Rob Sig bought it and turned it into a 24/7 weather machine. We are 24/7 weather. They don't do any outside programming other than live weather. They're in a big severe weather event. They'll go wall to wall with it. They try to focus more on the weather than they do the outside stuff, which is not a bad thing. I mean, these networks have to make money, and the TV world right now, as James can attest, is crazy. I mean, it's ever changing, and so we're riding that wave as what's the correct thing. And Rob, it's more of an OTT, is what we say. It's digital. It's not really. It's not your cable network. You're going to find it on all the streaming platforms, and you're going to find it on, we are on Dish. But outside of that, really it's just the streaming platforms that we go down, because that's where the TV market really is going. And so our owner has that foresight to several years ago, just to go down that path. And so really that's why people, well, where can we find you? You can find us on any app. Pluto, Samsung's a big one for us. And then Dish is a big one. But yeah, we covered weather events, all major weather events. Myself, Ben McMillan, and Brett Adair are the three main people that are out there in the field covering anything major. And so, it's what we do. It's what I love. They're weather all the time. That's kind of our logo, weather all the time. So you don't have any big breakups of, other than our overnight programming, which might be, I don't know, 3 hours. It's not live. It's all pre-recorded. But if we have a big overnight event, I mean, it'll be staffed accordingly. So I love the company. It's a Christian-based company. Everything we do, they're really people bosses, I guess you could say, is, if you need off, you're going to have off. So I love working there, and I don't see leaving anytime soon. That's for sure.
So no shows about towing wrecks over mountain passes or anything like that. No. Okay.
No.
Well, I know where to go get that, so I'm covered.
Yeah.
For sure. So, that's all really exciting stuff and really cool. And you've alluded to the summit here. Talk about its evolution from what I remember as, I guess it was ChaserCon. That was my first experience in 2003, going out to Denver, meeting Tim Samaras, all these incredible people, Tim Marshall,
Yep.
all these fabulous folks, and just being sort of starstruck. Talk about how that event sort of, became what it was and then went away, and how you picked it up.
I started going, I guess it was 2008, 2009. I was still in the Army. Just like I said, I've been chasing. My first tornado was 1996 in the Texas Panhandle, Fritz, Texas. I just happened to be there. So, I've had a passion for chasing since I can remember. I've always wanted to see it. I always had that adrenaline rush. And so I was like, hey, how do I learn more? How do I want to get to know people? How do I, where? And then I found out about ChaserCon. Kind of like most people, it's like, where do I start? Oh, let's Google. And sure enough, there's ChaserCon there. And that's pretty much what happened. So I started going to Denver every year, and I just enjoyed it. Some of my best friends in life, I actually met at ChaserCon. Gabe Garfield, I met at ChaserCon, one of the most brilliant meteorologists. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, I know I've lost more things in my brain they can fit in mine. He's lost more than can fit in mine. I screwed that up. But anyways, he's super smart. And then, Mark Austin is a great friend I met there. Of course, I met Tim there. I met Ed Grubb there. I met, I can just keep going, with the people that I met. And so I started going and realizing that it's a positive thing in the community to be able to take and learn and meet people. And as it evolved after Tim passed away, Tim Samaras, I started talking to Roger Hill, and Roger really, I knew it was coming to an end, but I didn't know when. And so I was, for about 3 or 4 years, I was talking to Roger. I was like, hey, Roger, give me a heads up if you're going to end this, because I really wanted to take it over. And sure enough, that's what happened. Roger was like, hey, this is our last year. And I'm like, okay, how can I take with what Tim and Roger did and expand it? And so part of that was completely starting from scratch. I didn't want to do anything that Roger and Tim did because it was just out of respect for them. I wanted a completely new name, start over, because I mean, as good as it was, I felt like it was missing stuff, and so I was like, okay, how do I rebrand it? How do I get it going to where it's a positive thing? Because a lot of people started saying negative things about ChaserCon. I was like, let's just revamp it. And so that's what we did. The first person I reached out to was actually Tim Marshall. I reached out to Tim Marshall. I was like, Tim, what do we got to do to make this thing successful? And Tim didn't hold back. I mean, I think everybody here knows Tim, and he didn't hold back. He goes, Eric, this is what we need to do. And I was like, okay, let's do it. My buddy James Menzies, he's a local there. He's a Brit that lives there in Norman. Actually moved from Great Britain to the United States just to see tornadoes and live it, which is absolutely astonishing to me still to this day that he moved from Britain to here just to chase tornadoes, and that he did. And so one of my good friends, and so we got involved with it. And the first year, had it all set up, was in March. And what happened in March of that year of 2019? COVID. And so we got shut down really quick. And I'm like, this thing is going to end before it starts. So we ended up doing a virtual. I think, Rick, you were involved with that one, weren't you? I think I brought you on virtually. And so from that, I was like, okay, how can we build upon that, even though it was kind of a failure the first year? And my first thought was, well, what do we do in the Army, right? We never give up. We're going to continue to go. And it took a lot of thoughts. Okay, I want to be able to take education, training, and experience and teach, because I got tired of my friends getting in trouble. I was part of the principal investigation on the accident side of the Twist-X deal with El Reno. And unfortunately, I had some details with what happened in that. And I'm like, I don't want anybody to go through that. Because I consider everybody in the weather community as my friend. And so what can I do to build upon that so that never happens? I'm a realist, and I realize I can't teach everybody to not be stupid, but it's at least the start. And so that's where we're at. I mean, I'm really building upon education, training, situational awareness, and some sort of, at least, hey, don't do this, because as a community, we're either gonna fail or we're gonna succeed, and there has to be a starting point. And to me, this is the starting point.
Talk about what you were feeling that day or that next day when you found out about Tim Samaras' passing, because it was like a gut punch to me. Because if you had told me all the chasers in the world that could have been killed, I would have thought he would have been the last. And that speaks to the violence of this tornado.
Well, I was on the tornado, and even to this day, I don't know. I think it's a God thing for me, because I am a up close person, not an irresponsible up close person, but an up close person. And the sound of that day, the look, the feeling, of course, being able to look at the forecast. Rick's office did an amazing job of just putting out the information of how dangerous that day was going to be. Of course, when you got Mark and Gabe talking to you, like, hey, don't play with these storms that day, and it's just like, I knew something bad was going to happen, because things were getting out of hand on the road. That was, to me, the beginning of the innocence, the loss of innocence. Excuse me. We lost innocence as a community that day, because of the lack of respect for Mother Nature. And so that next day, I had the gut feeling something happened. That tornado was too big, too fast. And I was a mile and a half away from it and was feeling it. And so, it was just literally sitting on my couch, and I get a phone call. And I'm like, who's this? Well, it was Roger Hill's wife. They were the only ones that knew. I was the only ones they knew that lived in Oklahoma. Says, hey, are you aware of this? I had no clue. Not even Mark or Gabe told me what was going on, even though they knew. It was almost like somebody kicking me in the gut and then slapping me across the face instantaneously, and it's like it didn't make sense. Like how? No, this is mistaken. You just wanted to deny. You didn't want to believe it. It's like them. No way. And so and then I show up within 2 hours. I drive to El Reno. Because part of it, how I got involved was I got asked to collect their belongings. They knew I was a police officer. They knew I wasn't going to steal their items or anything. So I got involved because I collected their items all across that area that the trajectory of the vehicle went. And and that's the thing I got to say about the Chase community. I made one phone call for help. I had 17 people out there within an hour helping me find all their items. They responded and respectfully really brought everything together and was able to help families grieve and recover because of the way the community responded in that situation. And so we got their items, and I didn't believe it. Carl and I had actually literally chased all the way to Alabama 2 weeks prior to that. And we'd had a lot of conversations what him and Tim were going to be doing, and I didn't believe it until I found his shoe. We literally found his shoe in the ditch, and I'm like, it is them, and that day is when I said, I never want this to happen to anybody again. And I will do whatever I can to at least help. If I can save one life in what I'm doing at the summit, it's all worth it. And I'll continue to do that. And so 1 turns into 2, 2 turns into 10, 10 turns into 100. And that's where I'm hoping just to continue with what we're doing and why I have qualified people at this event. I want my speakers and my guests to tell the truth of why things are the way they are, and you're doing things wrong, not because we want to have egos. It's because nobody wants to pick up a dead body on the side of the road. Nobody wants to see somebody go through a stop sign and kill a bunch of people. None of us do. And if we don't have the education and the people out there to say, hey, this is wrong, you got to do it, then we're going to fail as human beings, on top of people who are just weather enthusiasts and love being out there. I mean, it's got to start somewhere.
Now, you mentioned being virtual for a couple of years, and then you were live in 2022 and 2023. Is that right?
Yeah, this is technically this is our 4th year. The 3rd year that with the 2 other years we were live, and it's this building. We're about to sell out, which is awesome. Because it just means more people.
I need another 5-minute break here.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, we have 60 tickets left. And we're double what we were last year already. And it's a testament to my people that are speaking, who are putting in the time and effort to put this on. It's just been amazing. It's been great. People like Rick last year come in and spoke, and really, it's been great. I mean, it's the more education and training and qualified people I got. One thing I'm super excited about this year is I'm bringing in Gabe Garfield. He's an amazing teacher. He's actually going to be teaching our advanced meteorology for storm chasing, and spotting. And so he's going to be coming in a little more in depth. And so he's who I'm excited about, because I've learned so much from him over the years. And so, he's coming in and going to be doing a big part of our Friday event, which is we're, for the first time in 4 years of doing this, we're having breakout sessions, kind of like AMS, right? AMS has these breakout sessions, and we're kind of trying to go down the professional route of, hey, here's some stuff. If you don't know so much about huntergraph, maybe we need to get you to learn about huntergraphs, or maybe we should get you into basic radar, right? I mean, because when you're out there, that's one of the most things that get people in trouble is if you don't know how to read a radar. It's probably not smart to be by yourself going down the road in front of a supercell. So that's kind of, I think there's some of that is missed right now from some of the basic smarter stuff. And we're just trying to add to it, not take away, because what they do is great, but we just want to add to it.
Talk about the agenda for a minute, Mark. Eric, walk us through that. So what we can kind of expect.
Yeah. So everything we do is benefit. We are a complete nonprofit. Everything we do goes back to our scholarship in STEM. We've given 2 scholarships away, one for $1,200 each. And this year, if we can get there, our goal is to give 3 scholarships. So all this, every bit of money that we charge, everything, there's no profit involved. Anything that we have left over goes to the scholarship. So the golf tournament, is the start of it. That golf tournament is kind of more of this is actually at a golf course in North Fort Worth outside of the Texas Motor Speedway. And so we're like, hey, let's use the golf course for a benefit. And that benefit will go back to the Red Cross. Storefront Freaks, actually, their podcast that they did with their telethon, all that money is going to be donated to that. And then everything from there, Friday at noon is the beginning. And then we're going to go into breakout sessions. I've got, basic meteorology, basic radar, advanced meteorology, advanced radar classes. And this is all centric around chasing and spotting. And then that night, I don't know for your OU fans out there, Jane Knowles is a just graduated. He now works at KUZ at Channel 6 in Wichita Falls. He is going to be, he was an OU football player, just graduated. A lot of people love him. He's super great on social media with things he does. I'm going to have him as my keynote. What else can we get? What else we got that night? I know there's somebody else speaking that night, and I can't remember who, and I apologize off the top of my head. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but we also have Saturday morning is going to be great. Amaretta Scotto, I don't know if you guys have ever had her on. She's actually a hurricane hunter, works out of the office, National Weather Service out of Houston. Brilliant lady. I'm looking forward to her. Of course, Tim Marshall. One thing I could say about Saturday is Tim Marshall. Last I heard is he's in a cave right now or something in Clovis, New Mexico. Something about Clovis, man. So I don't know what Tim will bring out, but we're looking forward to it. And of course, our keynote will be Mike Bettis. Mike got COVID last year on us a week before the summit. And so we went ahead and brought him back this year to be our keynote. And really, it's just as, he got a lot of heat over the El Reno tornado. And so it's kind of, to me, as a chaser community, be like, come on, buddy, everybody makes mistakes. This is somebody who can learn and move on and is now a great opportunity to have him talk to us because all the crap he got from everybody for years over that incident there in El Reno, because it goes back to what we were talking about with just that day and that tornado. I mean, everybody got in trouble. That I know. So, I'm glad to have him in, but really it's just going to be a good old time. And Friday night, I forgot to bring this up. We're having video night again, and I'm super excited about it. We're actually, what I'm hoping to do is we got so many videos. We opened up the portal today, and I've already got like 90 videos. So I don't know how long this thing's going to be. But if anybody's ever been to ChaserCon or been to our event, we all know it's a big party after the presentations, and that's really just to get the community together, and because we are a family and we fight like a family, and hopefully, it goes back to that networking and whatnot that we do.
I know James A's got a couple of comments, and then Rick's got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Is there any way you can convince all chasers to never use the word vortice again?
I more likely hit the $1 billion lottery before that happens. I'm just going to be honest.
Isn't that the truth? No, I actually worked with Jaden's dad at NBC5 when I was in Fort Worth, and he is a super guy. And there is no doubt that Jaden would not grow up to be a super guy as well, because his dad was awesome.
Yep. So I officiate college football, and so I've had the pleasure to be on the same field with him. And so on the field and in person, and now he's got a great mentor with his Ken Johnson at KUZ. He used to be down in your area, James, over in Jackson. And he is a great guy. A passionate guy about weather. He went out with me during one chase this year in the North Texas area, and he is going to be awesome. And what I love about him is his messaging. because it comes from the heart. He's passionate. He loves what he does, and I look forward to it because he's bringing what he had on the football field into weather. And I feel like as TV people and weather, we need that passion and to continue to have that passion. I think he's going to be very successful.
Absolutely. Any guesses on what Tim's going to be dressed in?
All I know is he's in cave in Clovis, New Mexico. It's I don't know. He may be growing out a beard and all kinds of stuff. All I know is it's something to do with Clovis, man. So, because all us chasers spent pretty much the month of May in Clovis, New Mexico. So I think that has a little bit something to do with it.
Can't wait to see that. Eric, first of all, I appreciated being involved last year. I was really impressed by the turnout and the people there. A couple of things. I just wondered, do you have any breakdown or even a guesstimate of? I mean, this is a chaser summit, but the line between chasers and spotters is more blurry than it's ever been before. Do you have a sense at all of? I mean, are there pure spotters that are coming to this, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, I would say yes, because I was approached several times last year that says, hey, I just do local spotting, but I want to get better. How do I want to report? And that's part of why I brought you in last year, was because I want to help the National Weather Service offices with proper reporting and spotting from everybody, right? And so, Rick, I'm going to get you those numbers because I've got a way this year. I'm actually going to put out a survey at the summit this year of who's doing what. Because I'm curious too. That's another thing is like I want to know who's new, who's been a while, and how long have you been doing this? Because it's something I want to start tailoring in the future to. And especially why I brought in beginner stuff this year, because I really don't know. That's a great question. Because if it's a local spotter, or something, information I can help you with, by all means, because that's our mission as a summit is I want to try to bring everybody together for the betterment of our world.
Yeah, that would be really fascinating to know. And that's one of the challenges when you're talking to a group like that, is you are literally talking to everybody from Tim Marshall and Roger Edwards to someone who just heard about this on Facebook somehow and came because they were interested in storms. So that's what makes it cool, but it also makes it challenging. So, I mean, I talk to people all the time. Hey, what do I need to do to be a storm chaser? And, this is one of the things I kind of point them towards. So it's just interesting to know how, clearly you're getting a wide array of experience levels in there. It'd be cool to kind of know more about that.
And that's why I'm really big on, I'm kind of curious on the beginner stuff. How is that going to work out this year? And so, I got Karen Kashiba coming to help out just because she's as passionate like I am, and having basic radar. I'm like, like I told her, I'm not sure how many is going to be in each class, but it's something we need to know, I think, especially in our jobs, trying to figure out how to message that to get the correct training into those people.
One more thing I noticed on the agenda, we kind of did an episode focused on the movie Supercell. I can't remember when it was, but we all watched the movie and got to talk about it. You're going to have somebody there, the director or someone associated with Supercell, right? To kind of talk about that.
Yeah, he's the writer director, Jamie Winterstorm. He's him and Hank. Hank, I can't ever say his last name. Pecos Hank is what I just call him by. I always screw up his last name, but so all the video that was in that movie is Hank's. And so them two are going to be up there talking about the production of the movie and how they got through the process and their thought process on that movie. And on Saturday night, we're going to show the movie again with them being there after the presentation's done on Saturday night. We're going to, hopefully my video wall thing happens, but we plan on showing the movie there Saturday night after the last award ceremony that we do. So we'll see. I mean, I'm looking forward to that because, I know he's working on something else too, on a documentary within those same grounds. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to work out.
You probably want to start lining up a Twisters panel for the next year after that. I'm sure that's going to generate a little discussion.
Yeah.
It already is.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Jen, go ahead.
Hi, Eric. It is so nice to meet you. And I love your heart. And it's just neat to see how you want to, because chasing is so important, chasing, spotting. And there's so many responsible chasers. They are doing the right thing. They're trying to get the information to the National Weather Service, to emergency management and all that. But of course, we know there are yahoos as well. And, I don't know how many times we saw this year on social media where somebody said, oh man, I got too close. And, this is what happened. And then, of course, they seem apologetic, but then they're getting as many clicks as they can on how their car was tossed. And it's really frustrating. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on all that. And how can we turn steer the boat differently here? I mean, social media we've got everyone wants to get the clicks. But what do we do with the yahoos, and how do we steer the boat here differently?
So, and this is my dilemma in this, because I have a law enforcement background, so I compare it to this. You get, for the every 100 cars that you get coming down the highway, you're going to have that one idiot come through. And I say idiot loosely. You're going to have that one idiot come through and do the wrong thing. I don't know. It doesn't matter what deterrence you get. He knows I'm sitting there running radar. He's still going to be an idiot. So in that part, I don't think we'll ever fix everybody. But where it starts is education and knowing, what is the ramifications, and being absolutely blunt. So if we can change that one person and maybe save that one life, then that's all we can do. I hate to be like that, but the society today is what it is, where, it's such everybody wants to do the wrong thing and then ask questions later, and then come back and say, well, you should have done this. Well, no, if they don't know what's wrong, if they're not shown the right way, and it starts by people like me and people who have been around a long time to show them the right way. And then honestly, it goes back to media. I hate to say it, but if I was in charge of a media company, there's no way in hell I would ever buy a video that has anything next to a tornado, because it's irresponsible. That's what I do. It's not, and it also goes back to the brokers. The brokers got to stop selling this stuff. But when it comes down to money, that's the problem. When you involve money. Now, here's the thing. I make money on videos. I submit it responsibly. So I'm not downing it. I want people to make money on videos. But the problem, and that's part of the summit also, is video and getting, I get it. But we've got to have a line of whatnot. Now it goes back to, I get asked to as law enforcement all the time, should there be laws against certain things? Well, there are laws out there that we can enforce for people who are reckless on the roadway. I can't really enforce anybody driving into a tornado because there's no laws against it. But it's self-responsibility and self-policing to a certain extent. But it's that 1 in 100 rule. That one person, it doesn't matter. You're going to have that one person that's going to rob that store with a cop standing in the front yard or in the driveway. Unfortunately, that's human beings. I wish they could see what I saw with what happened with TwistX. I wish they could see what I see every day when I work as a cop if we have an accident on I-35, because that's basically all that happens when you get hit by a tornado. It's a car wreck, and it's a car wreck for 2.5 miles when it rolls your car for 2.5 miles. Yeah. People don't understand that. And unfortunately, I wish I could do more, but the only thing I could do in my heart is to train and try to push it and to be as blunt as I can. That's why I have everybody who speaks at the summit. I want them to be as blunt and pointed as possible. That's why I love James Spann. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. I like that he says what he says in his mind, because it's needed to be said. It's needed to be heard. I don't care if you don't like it, or if you think you're the wrong person that doesn't need to listen to it. You're probably the first person that is going to get in trouble. And so I'm very honest about it. And the first thing I'll say at the summit, and I say it every year, I don't care what you do here. I don't care. But if you can learn one thing that might save your life or somebody else's, that's what it's all about.
That's great. James Spann, do you have any questions? You look like you're.
Well, no, I did. This is a great. I mean, Eric's got it. I mean, he's got the right heart. He's got the right attitude. He doing everything right. But it's just, and these chasers are important. They're very important to what we do. But the one thing, Jen, I think, which kind of your comment, I just see them getting on the social media platforms, and they fight all the time. And I say that's not fair, that not all of them, but there's a subset they just seem to want to fight and criticize and tear each other down. And I don't understand that, Eric. What's up with that? Or is it just maybe it's just the regular subset of humanity? That's the way it is in the world right now. I don't know.
I want to be honest with you, James. I don't really know if those people are true chasers that are actually out there in the field. Most of the people that I see that cause the problems, I don't ever see in the field. Most of us who are in the field are actually pretty close to each other because you never know. Gabe Garfield, for example, I met Gabe Garfield because I pulled him out of a ditch in mud and I never knew him. I didn't know who Gabe Garfield was, but I stopped and helped him. So it seems like those people you don't ever see fight. Occasionally, you will see somebody calling out somebody for something. It's because we saw it and it needs to be called out. But going back to what you're saying, absolutely. But I will say, who somebody's in the community, that's probably 80-20 non-chasers that's causing most of the drama. And a lot of those is because they can't afford to drive, or there's some sort of social issues where the best thing they can do is sit in the basement and watch the computer screens and watch everybody's streams and then, clicking. That I've been hurt. And that's just the way I truly believe we are a community for those of us who are actually out there, especially those of us who are out there almost every event. Like with my job, I have to be out there for most events. So I get to meet everybody. And I have more positive experiences than I have negative. And any negative, like you go, is on social media. And that's why I just ignore it.
And I choose to believe. I see so many chasers, they'll come into a tornado zone and they will help people. They will stop what they're doing and they become first responders.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it right. And I just choose to try and look at that and count everything else as noise. But
Yep.
It seems to me, too, that one of the things that Rick Smith's been involved with is mental health issues within professional meteorology. And that's important. I mean, and it just seems like there might be some folks that are struggling with behavioral health issues on that side too.
Absolutely. We just lost one. I don't know if everybody knows. I mean, nobody knows what happened. We just lost a chaser, a pretty well-known chaser in the North Texas area, and nobody knows what happened. And I hope it's not mental health, but I am glad Rick's doing that because James, I couldn't have said it better with what you just said. It's on our side too. And I really don't understand it. I really don't.
Well, there's pressure, goodness gracious, but people don't understand what you go through in the field. I don't, because I'm in a warm, dry, safe studio. I got the easiest job in the world. You got the hardest job in the world. I don't understand what it's like, but it's got to be pressure packed. And, for some people that really have to monetize this, they've got that pressure of the monetization part of the whole thing. And then you're trying to stay safe. And then you might see some horrific things that people shouldn't see, of grotesque injuries, the graphic nature of the wounds that you see out there in the field. I don't think people understand what you go through. This ain't easy.
No, it's not. I go back to Rolling Fork this year, and this is going to be a big. We actually have a situation going on that happened in Rolling Fork that's going to be at the summit, and there were some people that took some training last year's summit that actually went to Rolling Fork and was able to help. For instance, I come on scene. I was, I stayed away from the tornado. I couldn't see it, but I rolled into town and it's absolutely devastated. It is one of the worst tornado scenes I've ever been on. I went straight to the police department to help set up their incident command because 2 police officers were that in town. Their fire department's gone. It was absolutely devastated. There was no help coming. Well, I get a tap on the shoulder. It's 5 chasers with a family that's trapped in the Mexican food restaurant. Well, all 5 of us rescued 7 people out of there that would have otherwise probably passed away from crush injuries. But it goes back to, I think, our heart as a community is there. It's just being trained and having that forethought of training experience and continue with that training experience throughout your life. And it's something I learned in the Army and in law enforcement that I want to continue to push to everybody and with the mental health, I mean, that's going to be an avenue that we've got to, as a weather community, approach, because to me, it is getting out of hand a little bit. I've never seen this many people have this many issues, and I don't know if it's COVID, a reflection of COVID or whatnot, but yeah, James, I appreciate you bringing that up because it's not easy, and mental health does wear down. I mean, law enforcement experience, military experience, and now this. I think I've seen worse scenes on tornado scenes than I have in my other 2 jobs.
James A., did you have anything you wanted to add? I've got the logistics question coming up here in a second, but did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, are we? I mean, Eric, you do a lot. If you're law enforcement and officiating, you're in a lot of very not very closely related fields. Is this bickering and trying to self-sort into a superior class of whatever I'm doing by dehumanizing other people? I'm sure it goes on in law enforcement and in football. I mean, look at some of these recruiting beat writers sniping at each other on social media too. But as humans, we just love to sort and classify ourselves into a superior group. And it's far easier to do that by dehumanizing other people than it is by being a good example. So, and I guess my other thought is if you've got a mentality of service, you're doing what you're talking about, where you're just stopping. Your purpose is to stop your performance and help people. And I think that's getting into the whole there's a movement in self-improvement of, is it performance or purpose? What are you doing? What is your life?
So I mean, I don't know. It's hard to put a finger on it for me. The way I was raised was to be a public servant first in all aspects of my life, and it's just carried over for everything that I do in life. Is to continue to put out in a public service forum my life in whatever aspect my life is. If it's my family, I do my family. If it's football officiating, I do football officiating. If it's storm chasing and my job, I mean, because it's all kind of connected now, that's where I focus, and I don't let it intermix. But whatever I do, I just use my heart, and how I was raised was to help others in everything that I do. And so that's just, I don't know. It's just, maybe that's what I contributed to. Is this the way I was raised, to help? If it's not about me, it's about you. It's that way in officiating. I can tell you, I will say the one thing that is really not aspect of life as a whole is officiating. I know more people in officiating that would rather help you than succeed themselves. And that's why I think I thrive there and why I like being there. And plus it gives to the kids, right? I still do high school. I still do college. It's giving back to the kids. I don't have any aspirations to ever go to the pros because it's a money deal. To me, it's all about giving back to society and to the kids. And I try to do that in storm chasing, and I do that as a police officer because I feel like, my life experience, if I can save that person or one person, hey, if I can take that DUI driver off the road, my purpose for that day is done.
So it's been an amazing hour, Eric, and we appreciate everything you've shared with us. It's been incredible. Talk about the logistics of the event, how people can register, how they can, book their hotel room. You talked extensively about the agenda. Any other pro tips we need to know before we get there?
Yeah, get it now. Get it now. Get it now. Here's part of the logistics of it. We feed everybody that's there. And so I have a certain amount of food that we have bought, and I have to come up with that money beforehand. And so we have a cutoff date of actually the 5th to pay that money for the food. I can add, but right now, if we reach our 450 people, we are 60 people away from that. And literally, as we're sitting here, I've had 5 ticket sales. As that increases, we're going to stop at 450, and I don't plan on adding because the venue only holds 600, and so I got to give a little bit of room for our vendor tables and whatnot. So we are about to sell out. Go to chasersummit.com. That's where you can buy the tickets. Also follow our Facebook and X pages, the National Storm Chaser Summit. That's the best thing, and hit the website up to buy your tickets. There's links to the hotels or to the hotel. Like I said, as when I got onto the the show tonight, there was only 4 rooms available. And so I literally looked right before we went on. So it was 4 rooms available. So we're about to sell out on rooms. But the good thing about that is there's hotel rooms all the way around that complex. So if you can't get a hotel, if the hotel's sold out, there's 6 other hotels right there at 114 and I-35 that you can walk. The best thing about this thing is there's a Buc-ee's in the parking lot. You can walk to Buc-ee's from the summit. So, yeah.
You can get your beaver nuggets. That'll be perfect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Vincent, we're so impressed with Eric, we're so impressed with what you're doing and can't wait to get there. And it's been such a pleasure to meet you. And please don't hesitate to ask us to sponsor next year. We'd love to be a part of what you're doing. I know all the other great weather podcasts are on your website and doing a great job, and we'd love to help too, because we really believe in what you're doing. Anything else from our panel before we go to our recorded segments and come back for the second half of a marathon Weather Brains tonight? James, Jen, anything?
No, just I wish I could go. I'm so upset I can't be there. I had folks, I was at the Mid-Atlantic Severe Weather Conference in November, and I had folks there saying, "Are you going in February?" And I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could. I just can't get there." But one of these days I will, Eric. We all agree that your heart is just so big and you're just such a servant heart, and thank you for what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And James Spann, I think you can take it away, and we'll come back. We'll come back after the recorded segments with our second guest. Eric, thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. A great segment here. So let's take a break. We're going to hear from Jen. We don't have a report from Tony this week, but Jen has This Week in Tornado History, and we'll be right back with part number 2 as Weather Brains rolls along.
This week in tornado history, 2 F3 tornadoes occurred on January 3rd, 2000 in the state of Kentucky. They were both spawned by one long-track supercell. We have a summary at tornadotalk.com that looks at one of those significant tornadoes that moved through Daviess County and the town of Owensboro. The twister developed near the Rome area. It tracked off to the northeast, crossing over the southern part of the Owensboro airport and then right into the heart of the city. The National Weather Service estimated the peak winds at 180 miles per hour. Over 1,200 structures sustained varying degrees of damage, and over 100 of the 1,200 were totally destroyed, and over 570 sustained major damage. Heavy damage also occurred to Apollo High School, Kentucky Wesleyan College, and a Winn-Dixie. Numerous automobiles were tossed. There were 18 injuries and no fatalities from this event. One person was critically injured in a home near the beginning of the path. They had a broken vertebrae along with cuts and bruises. If you enjoy Weather Brains, there's a global community of thousands of weather enthusiasts you'll want to join. The American Meteorological Society's Weather Band at amsweatherband.org. Connect with weather enthusiasts all over the world, as well as 10,000 plus members of the AMS. You can swap questions, data, and stories with researchers, broadcasters, storm chasers, and more. Join interactive weather webinars, test your trivia knowledge, enter your photos in the WeatherBand photo contest, or attend the annual Jamposium. WeatherBand is a place to nurture and share your love of weather. Get full membership for just $12 per year by going to amsweatherband.org.
And Jen, I saw an outbreak that I was not familiar with today on the Weather Channel newsletter, 1897 outbreak on this date, Arkansas and Louisiana. I don't know if you caught that or if you've paid any attention to that outbreak. I've got to go back and do some research about it.
No, I have not. I don't remember that one. So yeah, I'll have to do some digging on some of those.
Yeah, that's one I've got to dig into. Maybe we'll talk about that one on a future show. But always love your segments, Jen. Thank you. The second half of tonight's show features a professional aurora chaser. So we're going to go from tornadoes to auroras now. He's a photographer, PhD student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, the Geophysical Institute there. Has a passion for space weather, a mission to demystify the northern lights. He shares his expertise through educational content and capturing, incredible, aurora photography. He inspires others to explore and understand the beauty of the night sky. Vincent Ledvina, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me in that great introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you did a great job with that. Thank you. Share with us, how you first became passionate about auroras and space weather and what got you to, to pursue this PhD in this field?
Yeah, so the first time I ever saw the aurora was actually back in 2003, in October, on October 31st, 2003. So I was 4 years old, trick-or-treating. I grew up in Maplewood, Minnesota, and I actually saw the aurora right from my own backyard here in the Twin Cities. And of course, I didn't go out and pick up a camera and start aurora chasing after that. But I think that that sort of embedded a latent passion for space weather that eventually resurfaced when I was around 16 or 17. I've always been interested in the outdoors. I did Boy Scouts when I was younger, which, uh, had me outside all the time camping. And I saw the night sky in Minnesota in the middle of nowhere, and it just inspired me. It was beautiful. And I had seen the Northern Lights a couple of times on those trips and eventually picked up a camera. My dad was a photographer when he was in college, so he had an old camera. And I just fell in love with capturing the outdoors and sharing that beauty with other people, and then eventually, learned about astrophotography, and then sort of the ultimate to astrophotography is Northern Lights photography. It's sort of, the ultimate chase is trying to catch these auroras, especially from down in the States in Minnesota. And then later I moved to North Dakota to do my undergrad at the University of North Dakota in physics. And then up there, I really sort of took the aurora photography and aurora chasing to the next level. And people started asking me, hey, how do you do this? How do you go out and photograph the auroras? And then from there, I realized, maybe I have some knowledge that people want, and that people really want to see these auroras. And that's kind of how I got into this whole education side of things, and realized that there's a huge audience for space weather education, and that a lot of this is really not boiled down to a level that the public can understand. And then, just to pursue the aurora chasing even more, I started my PhD this last fall up in Fairbanks, Alaska. So auroras have been a part of my life since I was a toddler, and they continue to be.
Talk about, you mentioned demystifying the process. Talk about aurora science and some of the, key misconceptions or myths about it, and, just how space weather impacts their appearance and intensity.
Yeah, so auroras are formed by chemical reactions going up in or going on in the upper atmosphere. To put it in a way that people probably can understand, it's sort of how a neon lamp works, how a neon lamp lights up. It's electricity flowing through the lamp, and it excites these atoms, these gas atoms and gas molecules, and causes them to light up specific colors. That's exactly how the aurora works. You have particles raining down from outer space into Earth's atmosphere. They eventually have to collide with something, and then they collide with nitrogen and oxygen and produce the brilliant colors that we see. The most common color is green, which is produced by oxygen, and then red again by oxygen. Then you also have a sort of pink fringe underneath the green, which is nitrogen. And then blue aurora, which is the most rare type of aurora, is produced by sunlight hitting nitrogen at some very high altitudes. And space weather, the sun produces transients, different phenomena like coronal mass ejections, big explosions of plasma from the sun, and produces all these things. But the Earth is always surrounded by a solar wind. It's kind of like you have a hot cup of coffee and you have steam coming up off that top of the mug. And the sun is sort of like that hot cup of coffee. You have the solar wind consistently radiating away from the solar surface, and Earth is being bathed in that constantly. And that solar wind has a magnetic field and carries with it particles that interact with Earth's magnetic fields. And when these particles from the solar wind interact with Earth's magnetic fields, the energy can get transferred into our own magnetic shield and can penetrate over the geomagnetic poles, which is why we have auroras near the North and South poles, the aurora borealis in the Northern Hemisphere, aurora borealis in the Southern Hemisphere. And now these space weather transients, these things, these coronal mass ejections, there's also high-speed streams. These enhance the solar wind, which can create more intense magnetic fields, denser particles, denser solar wind, and also those particles could be streaming out faster as well. So you have more energy in the solar wind. So then you have more energy flowing into Earth's magnetic shield, and then the auroras then move down to lower latitudes. And that's how you get those geomagnetic storms. And that's how I was able to see aurora down in Minnesota.
Now, you mentioned that 2024 may produce particularly strong auroras.
Mm-hmm.
So elaborate on that and
Mm-hmm.
discuss what factors are going to contribute to that.
Yeah, for sure. So the sun goes through an 11-year activity cycle, roughly 11 years. It could span anywhere from 9 to 13 years, but nominally it's 11 years. And we're coming up on what's called solar maximum. So if you know what a sine wave looks like, that's basically what the solar cycle is. It's sort of a, up, down, sort of like a wave, right? And we're kind of riding the top of the wave right now. So a lot of scientists think that that's going to peak this year in 2024, which means that we might have the most active year for space weather that we've not only seen in the last 11 years, because that's how long a solar cycle usually is, but this solar cycle, 25, is predicted to be stronger than solar cycle 24. So actually, this might be the strongest solar cycle we've seen in 2 solar cycles or over 20 years. So that's where all the headlines that say strongest aurora in over 2 decades come from, is that we haven't seen a solar cycle like this since the early 2000s. And that's really exciting because the space weather that I was just talking about is what gives us these really big geomagnetic storms that drive auroras down to lower latitudes. Last night we had aurora here in Minnesota, and it seems like we're having aurora here almost every other night at this point. And just this year, there's been 4 or 5 times that we've seen auroras clear down to the US-Mexico border, and then in the Eastern Hemisphere, in China and India as well. So we've had some really great events last year, and that should just continue this year in 2024. So I'm really excited.
Talk about the K index for a moment,
Mhm.
because that seems to be a key number, a key indicator to tell us when those auroras are going to be visible at different latitudes. What else does it tell us, and how can people access that?
Yeah, so actually, that kind of goes into one of the misconceptions is that the K index, the KP index is K planetary. There's also local K indices, and those K indices, including the KP, are based on magnetometer readings. So the auroras are currents in the upper atmosphere that create this light, and they fluctuate. So there's changing currents, there's changing magnetic fields. And those induce magnetic fields in the ground that we can then pick up with magnetometers. And magnetometers all over the world do this. And the KP is a 3-hour average of these magnetometer readings all throughout the auroral oval, but also in lower latitudes as well. So you have magnetometers in Alaska, but then you also have magnetometers like in the central US and central Europe. And they're averaged. So all the values are averaged over 3 hours. And then that is put into a number from 0 to 9, 0 being the least activity, 9 being the highest activity. And starting around a 5 is when we get geomagnetic storms. So a KP5 is a G1 or minor geomagnetic storm, all the way up to a KP9 or a G5 or extreme geomagnetic storm. And just to give you an idea of how rare those are, typically in a solar cycle, we only see those G5s 2 or 3 times, if that. We didn't see a single G5 last solar cycle. But the problem with the KP index, at least this is my own opinion, people might disagree, but it's a 3-hour average of geomagnetic activity. And the aurora it's a global phenomenon, but it is a little bit localized. You have places on Earth during a night that are going to get enhancements in aurora. And these enhancements travel throughout the auroral oval, which is how the aurora looks from space. It sort of forms this donut if you were to have a sort of God's eye view over the poles. And, this 3-hour average really smears out those localized enhancements and also what are called substorms. These substorms are usually 30 to 60 minutes of enhanced activity that initiate over sort of one point in the auroral oval, then spread out. And the KP really does not do a great job at telling you when those substorms are happening, or if it does, it'll tell you what happened 3 hours ago. It won't tell you in real time. The KP index, though, is reported by a lot of forecasting agencies, including the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center, who are the official forecasting agency of the United States. So it is, used a lot. It's a 0 to 9 scale, so it's really easy for people to understand. I get why people gravitate towards it. It's in all the Aurora apps you could think of. And, it's not completely useless. It is useful for sort of contextualizing the forecasts that come out. For example, if you see that there's a KP7 predicted for one night, yes, there's probably going to be some activity, but it's not going to tell you when necessarily that activity is specifically going to happen. It'll tell you whether or not conditions are elevated. Like, for example, you could say, oh, we might get anywhere from 5 to 15 inches of snow on Thursday. There's going to be some snow, but it won't tell you, how much snow there's going to be. It's kind of the same thing with the KP. There's generally going to be more activity, but you're going to have to really dig down into some other data the night of that forecast to see what's going on. And I can get into that a little bit more, but the bottom line on that is just look at webcams, look at reports on social media, follow photographers, follow aurora chasers, because we're going to be out there and reporting what's going on in the night sky. You can throw as much data, as many instruments at the aurora as you want, but the bottom line is that the aurora is going to do what it wants to do, and it's really complicated. So sometimes, even with all the best tools, you're not going to know what's happening unless you actually go outside and look up.
So Vincent, this seems fascinating to me, and it's one of my bucket list things I want to do. If I were starting out as an aurora chaser, and I'm sure we have lots and lots of folks that feel the same way, how would you start planning? What tools would you use? Where would you be looking at for your travel itineraries? How far out do you have to decide, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, on social media, this is basically what I get every single day is when and where. And people want to plan a trip to see the aurora, and I completely get it because yeah, my life has been changed by the aurora. It's extremely beautiful, it's mesmerizing, it's breathtaking. And it's something that everybody should see, and especially in 2024, since we have all this opportunity. If I were somebody looking to plan a trip, as I said, the auroral oval is kind of where the aurora is, and that's sort of in latitude roughly 65 to 68 degrees geomagnetic latitude. So just think of the Arctic Circle and try and find locations around there. You're going to be in the auroral oval. And why that's important is that even with no activity, there's aurora going on somewhere in the world at all times within that auroral oval. It has to be night, of course. But during the night in the auroral oval, you will see aurora, even if the activity is really, really low, which sometimes happens, right? It's completely luck, essentially. So that kind of gets into the next thing is there's no way to predict the aurora. So you have all these people that come to me and come to others saying, hey, I'm going to be traveling to Alaska on March 29th. What are my chances? And I just say, I don't know, because you can't really predict the aurora beyond 1 or 2 hours. So there are some months that are better than others, especially around the equinoxes. So March and September are statistically better months to see the aurora than near the solstices. And that's due to something called the Russell-McFerrin effect. Not going to go into that. There's lots of papers explaining how that works, but it just kind of boils down to the orientation of Earth and the magnetic fields and how they align. And it's just better transfer of energy from the space weather environment into Earth's magnetosphere. That's all you need to know. But yeah, the equinoxes are slightly better. And then also, if you're a photographer, you might want to go around a new moon or a first or third quarter moon. I love full moon auroras, and actually the full moon can help enhance the colors to your eye. But for photography, I think having a new moon or a smaller moon is a little bit better because you can just see the fainter auroras much better. It doesn't get washed out as much. And that's something that I love to do is the photography. So I'm really excited when there's a big geomagnetic storm forecast around a new moon. But yeah, just to summarize, you want to get underneath the auroral oval. Oh, and it also has to be during a month where it's dark. You can't go in the summer because there's too much light. In the US and southern Canada, you do get auroras occasionally, and even in the summer you can see them because it doesn't get fully or it stays fully dark even at the solstices. But up in Alaska, for example, we have 23 hours of daylight on the solstice in June, whereas now we only have 3 hours of daylight. So the winters are nice because you have some really, really long dark nights. So yeah, plan around the equinoxes and try and hit a first or third quarter moon and you'll be good to go.
Now, I love a company called Vacations by Rail, and I'm inadvertently giving them a sort of a plug here, but they talk about riding on the Alaska Railroad's Aurora Winter Train. Is that I mean, obviously it's a real thing. Is that a good thing to do? And where do you go if you're going on one of these tours? You go to Fairbanks or where?
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of people enjoy that train. I've personally never done it. The only train that I've done, which is, I guess, kind of like a Polar Express type journey, was up to Churchill, Manitoba. Not sure if you know where that is, but Okay, yeah. So it's right on the Hudson Bay. It's very, very remote. There's no roads that lead into Churchill. And I took the train from Winnipeg. One time it was 40 hours, and I took the train from Thompson one time and it was 16 hours. It sounds brutal, but it's actually really nice and relaxing. I recommend everybody try and do it at least once in their life. And I saw some polar bears up there. I went in September, one time in March the other time. But yeah, Churchill's a great spot. Fairbanks. Tromsø, Norway, Rovaniemi, I think is how you pronounce it. That's another good spot. Reykjavik, Iceland, really anywhere underneath the Aurora Oval. Northern Canada is very underrated. There's a lot of great spots out there. Yellowknife, for example. In Alaska, Anchorage works as well. A little bit further south, but you do get auroras almost every single night there. Maybe not overhead, but definitely to the north. And Fairbanks is where I live, and it's great. The weather in Fairbanks is probably one of the best. It's some of the best in the world, especially in March. It seems like every single March I have like 20 straight nights of aurora for whatever reason. But
Well, I'm making notes for my spring break trip at this point. This just sounds spectacular. So, talk about your PhD studies. What are you involved in that relate to this, and what are some of the things you're particularly fascinated by?
yeah, so I started my PhD last year at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I originally, I went to school at the University of North Dakota, and it was it was an amazing time. Don't get me wrong, but there was no space physics there at all. And I knew that I wanted to do something with the aurora, but in actually the reason why I went to UND is because it was somewhere where I had a better chance of seeing it. My parents wouldn't let me move to Fairbanks right away. Otherwise, I would have went up there for undergrad, but I decided, okay, North Dakota is about as north as you can get. So I had to do some legwork on my own, and major thanks to my mentors who gave me opportunities. But I did a number of internships at National Solar Observatory. I did an internship at Aurorasaurus, which is a NASA citizen science project. That was during COVID, and then I worked for Predictive Science, which is a coronal mass ejection modeling and solar physics modeling company. So I kind of bounced around all these different places, kind of started actually at the sun and then moved down towards the Earth, closer to the aurora. And then I finally got some grant funding from the NSF, and that allowed me to come up to UAF and start my research in auroral beads. So in case you're not familiar with auroral beads, and I've got a lot of jokes about, about the name auroral beads, but essentially what they are is you have this band of aurora that forms and it moves equatorward, so south for the northern hemisphere for the northern lights over the course of the night. And it's part of this substorm. It's actually a three-part process. There's a growth phase, and there's a breakup phase or an expansion phase and a recovery phase. In this growth phase, this arc moves down to the south, and then right before the expansion phase, you get these beads that form along the arc. They literally look like beads. I've seen them before. They happen almost every single night before these substorms. And these beads are somehow tied to the substorm onset process or whatever's triggering the substorm. And why do people care about the substorms? Well, they're the most intense periods of aurora that we have in a given night. There's usually 1 to 2 substorms every night. And that's when the aurora dances, gets really colorful, really bright. That's when people want to go out and take pictures of the aurora. That's kind of like the textbook aurora that people think of when they're like, oh, I want to go up to Fairbanks and see the aurora. Whenever they see a picture or a video, it's during a substorm. So these auroral beads are somehow tied to the substorm onset process. And not only is it cool just for me, because I've seen the beads myself and I've photographed them, but it's cool for scientists as well. It would help us solve a fundamental question of how substorms occur and why do they occur? What physical processes cause them? What plasma instabilities, for example, are responsible for the substorms? Nobody really knows. There's a lot of competing theories. It's probably one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in space physics. But also from a more practical standpoint, these substorms are full of really intense auroras. And as I said before, you have these fluctuating magnetic fields. Well, those actually induce currents in the ground that could disrupt power grids. And these substorms can cause scintillation for high frequency radio communication like GPS. So actually, there's a practical application to it as well. And that's what I love about space weather is that not only is it cool, it produces amazing auroras, and it's just cool to learn about, but it actually can affect people. And studying it will better humanity.
Well, Vincent, you've got 5 hosts on here who are drooling at the prospect of going to chase auroras, something I never even thought about doing, but that sounds amazing. I want to go back to something you mentioned, the word aurorasaurus earlier, and it was talk about that and the citizen science component of that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm super passionate about citizen science. That's kind of how I got into this, actually, was the photography and just the way that I could contribute and kind of help out with the science. I got involved in the space weather community on social media and just found a great group of people who were super passionate about space weather and getting the public involved. Aurorasaurus is a NASA citizen science project. I interned for them in 2020. Dr. Liz McDonald is the founder. And essentially, the aim of the project is to make aurora forecasts more reliable, improve people's chances of seeing the aurora by crowdsourcing reports on their website, aurorasource.org, which are then plotted alongside the model of the aurora outputted by what's called the Ovation Prime model. And what's cool about the Ovation Prime model is it shows you a view line in the model. So it kind of gives you what an auroral oval should look like. And it's an output from NOAA SWPC, Space Weather Prediction Center. And it's kind of what everybody screenshots when they're posting, oh, look at the aurora. It's this nice auroral oval. But the view line it outputs is supposed to show the most equatorward extent from which you can see the aurora. And for the most part, it does a good job. But during these really big geomagnetic storms, you have people reporting as far south sometimes as New Mexico or California, Arizona, Oklahoma, these really southern states that they're seeing aurora. And it's way south of this view line that the model's putting out. So, Aurorasaurus started figuring out, hey, people are seeing the aurora where the model's not predicting, and we want to make sure people are seeing that. And that's how I think the project was born. But not only that, it's also a platform for citizen science. Photographers can submit their images. There's an ambassador network, which I'm a part of. So, there's people all over the world that are sort of, I guess, promoting Aurorasaurus and the mission of, educating others about aurora science. And we meet all the time with scientists to give talks, to us for us to give talks to scientists. And a lot of our photos are actually incorporated into real research. And that's sort of the citizen science aspect, is that a lot of this new research around auroras is coming from photographers, especially, I don't know if you've heard of the whole Steve phenomenon, but that occurred in 2018 and has just been sort of a media frenzy. But, aurora photographers essentially discovered this new type of aurora. It's actually technically not an aurora, but it looks like it, and it's called Steve. That's actually the name of it. So photographers gave it that name, and then NASA, of course, being NASA, had to say, oh, it actually stands for Strong Thermal Emission Velocity Enhancement. So, but yeah, I mean, citizen scientists have been contributing to space physics, for centuries, but especially now with the advent of, really modern smartphones that can take pictures of the aurora. I mean, everybody who's listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, could be an aurora citizen scientist. It's really simple. All you have to do is go to aurorasource.org and report if you've seen aurora or not. Even negative reports are super helpful. And all those data get fed into research and, other things, and also just help other people see the aurora. So it's a great project. Really glad I was able to intern with them, and I'm still an ambassador now and volunteer for them. So
that is very, very cool. Thanks.
Hey, Vincent, James in Tulsa. Thanks for being on. It's on my bucket list to go to, and I'm going to butcher the name, Utgavik, whatever Barrow used to be.
Yep.
I can't convince my kids that would be a really neat place to go, but tell me about visiting that. Is it a good aurora place? Is it socked in with clouds all the time?
Yeah, I've actually never been there. I would love to go up there too. I've only been in Alaska for a year. So haven't been able to, I've explored quite a bit of the state actually, but I haven't been up there. The furthest north I've been is Coldfoot. That's a really great place to see the aurora. And I'm guessing somebody had some cold feet at some point, and that's why it's named that. When I was there, it was like -45. So I can attest that. I also had cold feet when I was in Coldfoot. But yeah, up on the Arctic Ocean, it's really a great place to see aurora. I have a couple of friends up there who work not it's actually in Prudhoe Bay, so it's a little bit further east, but they send me pictures of the aurora all the time, and it looks like it's a great place. I hear the weather's a little bit cloudy though, near the Arctic Ocean. I think especially before it freezes over, there's just a lot of cloud cover. So I don't know if it's the best spot for auroras just because of that. You might be better off going to Fairbanks, but I think just to, see the furthest, north point in the United States is definitely worth it because you can go take a snow machine out there and do that.
How do you
I
pronounce it?
I have been avoiding it. I actually don't really know how. I think it's Utiavik, but I could be wrong about that because
Utiavik.
somebody
Okay.
corrected me like a couple of weeks ago and said, "Oh, you're not actually saying it right." I think it's like Utiavik, or it could be like Uktiavik or something. I don't know. I don't want to mispronounce it, but yeah, I've always wanted to go up there. It's actually just a short flight from Anchorage. So if you're in Anchorage, for a vacation, it's just like a $200 round trip ticket on Alaskan Airlines, which is pretty nice.
Well, I've been sold on it because a good friend of mine from when I lived in Fort Worth was at Eielson Air Force Base Station.
Okay.
And they lived in North Pole, Alaska, which I think would be the coolest place ever to send your Christmas cards from.
Yeah, they get hundreds of thousands every year to the Santa Claus house in North Pole.
So if you were planning to go up to one of these great places here, Fairbanks, what sort of weather should you prepare for January, February, and March, Vincent? I mean, are you talking about extreme weather gear, or are we still talking about, average temperatures that are just really, really cold but not insane, like Barrow, like where James A wants to go?
Yeah, I would say Fairbanks, is as cold as you can get, honestly. I did a lot of winters in North Dakota and I've grown up in Minnesota, so I wasn't phased when I went up to Fairbanks, but it does get really cold up there. Coldest I've seen was actually the coldest ever was actually on my way up to Fairbanks. I drove up there just for fun, which most people don't do that for fun. I did it in January of 2022, I think it was, and I saw minus 68 Fahrenheit, and that was cold. I can tell you that basically no amount of layers will protect you at minus 68. Although I was still out there, I actually have an aurora photo for minus 68. So
Hmm.
that's the most extreme I have gotten. But Fairbanks is actually not bad. It's cold, but it's pretty dry, so the cold doesn't feel as bad as like even 0 or minus 10 degrees when it's really humid, like it was in North Dakota when I lived there. Also, there's basically no wind in Fairbanks, which is amazing. I mean, having no wind is a blessing, I will have to say. Wind in North Dakota, I mean, I lived there for 4 years. I did my time. And the winters there, I actually would say were worse, are worse than what you get in Fairbanks because Fairbanks doesn't get any wind. It does say snowy until May, though. So, I mean, if you don't like snow, don't go to Fairbanks because it started to snow in mid-September and it's stuck. It's stuck in mid-September and it hasn't, I mean, it just keeps piling up. It never goes above freezing ever in the winter. So it's cold. Just be prepared for the cold, but it's nothing that a bunch of layers won't solve, in my opinion.
Okay, I've got a really ignorant question about living in Alaska when it's that
Sure.
cold. When it's 20, 15 Fahrenheit above zero, and I walk across my floor and touch my light switch and get this nasty static discharge, is that happen everywhere up there? Do people have humidifiers? How do you not just have nosebleeds and chapped lips all the time too?
That's a good question. I actually haven't really noticed. Haven't really noticed the dryness. I mean, it generally is dry, but it's not like super, super dry. It does get really staticky. So yeah, I mean, when you have your heat on in your house and there's already just not a lot of humidity outside, it does get really dry. I would say a lot of people have air purifiers because the air pollution is really, really bad in Fairbanks. So because it's surrounded by basically mountains on three sides, and there's a lot of wood burning stoves. Most of the homes in Fairbanks are heated by heating oil or they're wood burning. There's a lot of just like particulate matter that sits right above the city, and especially when the inversion layer is really, really low. So yeah, there's an inversion layer right over Fairbanks too. So if you're visiting Fairbanks to see auroras and it looks cloudy in town, just drive 20 minutes and it's probably clear. Yeah, the air pollution's some of the worst in the entire country, especially in the winter. So a lot of my friends, I need to get one, have air purifiers just because it is actually unhealthy to breathe that all the time. But luckily my home is kind of outside of town and it's up on a hill, so I don't suffer as much. But there's been a couple nights this winter where I've gone out and it's actually just been smog. It's been completely like hazy just from all the pollution. So yeah, I haven't noticed the dryness as much because I've just been focused on all the air pollution.
So, Vincent, have you been to Iceland? Would that seems like a very civilized way to go do it, to stay in Reykjavik or whatever. But talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I went to Iceland. I've been to Iceland 3 times now. I went for the first time in March of 2016 with my dad. I went in June of 2019, and then I just went last year, which was in January. I saw Aurora in 2016. That was actually one of the first times I ever saw Aurora, but I saw some amazing Aurora in January of last year. Iceland is a great spot to see Aurora. There's really, I mean, no better place on earth than Iceland in general, but in the winter, it's beautiful. I think it's even more pretty in the winter than it is in the summer. But the only caveat to that is that it is really wild. I mean, the weather is just extreme in the winter. I mean, we landed there and it was in the midst of a blizzard, and I was seeing news articles of people stranded in the national park for hours and hours and hours. And it's a really small country, and they're super, super good about, plowing the roads, but at some point you're just lacking a certain amount of people to do the work. So we had this huge blizzard move through, and there were a lot of roads that just weren't cleared in time for us to make it up. We had some Airbnbs on the north end of the island. So you fly into Keflavik, which is sort of on the southwest. We had to make it all the way to the north part of the island. Luckily, I don't know how we got this, but we got a rental car with studded tires. So I don't know how that worked out, but because usually the rental cars, you have to watch out because they'll sell you something with winter tires and four-wheel drive, but the tires will be completely bald. That's a big mistake tourists make, is not checking the tires before they drive off the lot. But luckily, we got one with great tires, and we had to take these back roads up to this Airbnb. But it was still really sketchy. So I would say Iceland in winter is not for the faint of heart. If you can, do it with a tour company. I always say if you feel uncomfortable, just hire a tour guide. They have, not only do they have insurance, but they have the expertise. They know, especially for cloud cover too. You can't see the aurora if there's clouds blocking it. So they'll know sort of where these clear patches are. There's sort of these rain shadows that occur, especially, right near mountains where clouds just can't form for whatever reason. They'll know where those are, whereas you're never going to find out unless, you're a local. So I always say, if you're trying to go somewhere to see auroras, just hire a guide, especially if it looks cloudy or it looks partly cloudy. But Iceland was amazing. I mean, the landscapes are incredible. There's really nothing else like it. I mean, just an extreme wild place to go. And right now the flights are, well, actually, I don't know about right now, but when I went, the flights were pretty cheap. And that's surprising to me. But during the winter is sort of an off season, so you can get some pretty cheap flights.
Now, you mentioned being close to the equinox being a good time. So the last week of March is not too far away from that equinox, is it?
Right. Yeah. So even though it's, around the equinox, it's not, just right at the equinox. It's sort of the equinox plus or minus a month, essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm actually running an Aurora workshop up in Fairbanks the last week of March. So we chose that because it was near the equinox, and March is usually a really good time in Alaska, especially in Fairbanks, for clear skies. So we're crossing our fingers for that one.
Well, you need to run some organized tours out of that. It sounds like that would be a fun add-on. Now, we talked to Tom Skilling about 10 days ago, and he was on our show last week, and he loves Alaska. And he was talking about, having a place up there and going up often and wanting to eventually do tours, as he goes into his new phase of his career in retirement. We need to make sure he adds auroras into that process because we
Yeah,
didn't know to
definitely.
ask him. I wish we had you on before we had him on.
Yeah, Aurora tours are super fun. They're a lot of work, but they're so rewarding. I had one last year up in Fairbanks, right around the same time in March, and it's going to be an annual thing now. So I'm really excited for this one coming up.
Well, good. Well, keep us posted on what you do there because we'd love to. I think just having the transcript of the show tonight will be like a how-to guide. You've been so organized. Now, talk to me about like alerts and things that you can do to
hmm
begin to familiarize yourself. I subscribed to the space weather alerts several months
hmm
ago, and I get them regularly. And the pro ones cost some money.
hmm
When I did a little digging, tonight, I know that the Space Weather Prediction Center has a series of alerts that you can subscribe to. Which ones of those are extremely useful, and which ones are a little bit too much or over our heads or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think having any alert is helpful just to sort of get you, aware of what's going on. I generally, advise people to just look for whatever is already out there. I mean, there's a lot of good paid services. I'm personally not familiar with a lot of them. But what I typically go by is the Space Weather Prediction Center does put out free alerts for geomagnetic storms. And especially if there's a big event on the sun, like a big coronal mass ejection, for example, they'll usually release a model which gives you sort of an impact time of this CME, this coronal mass ejection, and that sort of gives you a window. So you kind of take that impact time, and then plus or minus 10 hours. Then you can kind of around that time look at what I would say is the best resource, which are Aurora webcams and ground truth data from like Aurora Source Facebook groups and things like that. I also sort of started my own Aurora alerts thing, if you will. It's just through my email list. I usually just take whatever NOAA SWPC puts out, Space Weather Prediction Center. They don't do a lot of public outreach. Their customers are power grids, aviation, HF comms in the military. So they're not putting out forecasts for the public. So it's kind of hard to interpret those. So I try and send out emails whenever there's some big event going on and just give people what, the basic information is, and, just that, try and not complicate things. So, I would just stick to the NOAA SWPC forecasts, and then, sort of around when they're forecasting an event to happen, go and look at the Aurora webcams, look at what social media is saying, figure out where the Aurora is being seen, and then, you can make your own sort of judgment as to whether or not you're in the sort of area where people are seeing it.
Now, Vincent, in a few minutes, we'll have picks of the week. So make sure you, conjure up the best ones you got, especially for your email alerts and for the event coming up in Fairbanks. That's exciting. Some folks might want to do that if it's not already sold out. But it seemed like last week I saw some media on polar stratospheric clouds. Are you familiar with those? And can you talk about those and how they're different?
Yeah, I'm aware of them, but it's definitely not my expertise. So don't come at me if I say anything too out of line. I'll try and keep it short. But yeah, they're not aurora, and they're not created by the same processes of aurora. They're actually clouds. So they're formed by condensation, but they're formed really high up in the atmosphere, like in the stratosphere, and I think even in the mesosphere. But they're super beautiful. I'm not exactly sure why they occur. I think it could even be seeded by meteor dust, or like I think there was actually a study that came out with all the increased rocket activity we've seen in the space launches. There's actually an increased number of these polar stratospheric clouds because of all the rocket fuel being dumped into the upper atmosphere. So yeah, I'm not super familiar with those. I've actually never seen one myself, but they're beautiful. I've seen the pictures on social media. They're just amazing.
All right, Vincent, let's get serious here. So when is the next Carrington event?
Next Carrington event. Well, not sure about that one. I think I would be lying if I could give you a date on that, but hopefully not soon. Or maybe
so
hopefully
this
if you're an
was
Aurora
in
chaser.
I've looked at this thing. This was in 1859.
Yes.
And I was actually not doing weather on television back then, but it's a fascinating case study. And at some point, it will happen again, right? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yep. Yeah.
And so you don't know. Darn, I was hoping to get an answer here. So, which brings to mind the question of the low latitudes. A lot of us are in the low latitudes down here, and it would be just a dream to be able to see an aurora once, where we can't travel that much. What's the farthest south in the contiguous United States where people have seen an aurora?
Well, I think last year there were a couple photos from the Everglades. So I think that's about as far south as you can get besides Hawaii.
Whoa.
But yeah, I mean, we're talking about a subvisual glow, kind of only visible on the camera. But I heard of reports from people actually seeing the aurora, because, the aurora can just be, sort of a glow, and people take a photo and all of a sudden it looks green and red and beautiful. But I've seen or I've heard of some reports last year of people seeing actually visible aurora to the eye with some red color from as far south as like Oklahoma, North Texas, even Colorado, Wyoming, Northern California. And those were pretty, I mean, they were KP8 events, KP7 events. So on a scale from 1 to 9, that's getting up there, but that's not as strong as we can get. And I mean, in the past, there's a lot of space weather archives which report auroras as far south as Cuba. I think during the Carrington event, there's some newspaper article that describes people in Cuba reading books by the light of the aurora. So, and that was during the Carrington event. So yeah, it can get pretty wild. So we'll see. I mean, 2024, we still have 360 odd days left. So we have a lot of time for things to happen.
And what's your opinion of the products issued by the Space Weather Prediction Center, their forecast? I see these graphics. Are they pretty accurate? Tell me about I guess, the false alarm ratio and the probability of detection with those maps.
That I don't know the exacts on the false alarm ratio and how well they do, but they're the official forecasts office for the US. They do a really good job. I mean, they're in the best interest of giving people the most accurate forecasts. I mean, they're really doing it for the safety of the infrastructure here in the United States, like the power grids, the HF comms, the aviation industries. Unfortunately, the problem with space weather is that there's just not a lot of data points to draw forecasts from. We don't have that many spacecraft in space measuring all these things. So it's actually very, very hard to get an accurate forecast. Just to give you an idea of the accuracy, I do know that these coronal mass ejections that come out from the sun, there's these big clouds. This is what gives us the biggest or the best chances of seeing the aurora, the most extreme space weather. Those models are usually accurate within 10 hours, but sometimes they're complete misses as well. So there's a lot of sort of false alarms and hype that never realizes. But it's just a matter of we don't have the data. And I think a good analogy for it is that space weather right now is where terrestrial meteorology was in the 1960s. I've heard that from a lot of scientists. So it's really hard, and people are doing the best that they can. But yeah, I always say take the forecast with a grain of salt, but they're good for context, I would say.
And give us some resources in addition to the Space Weather Prediction Center for people that might want to follow somebody on a social media platform that would be reliable and good information.
Yeah, so one of my friends, her name's Dr. Tamitha Scove. She's sort of the space weather woman, if you will. She does a lot of forecasting on her YouTube channel. She releases a space weather update. I think it's once every week or once every 2 weeks. Oh, you already had her on. Awesome. Yeah, she's great. I visited her studio down in Los Angeles. But yeah, on Twitter, there's a lot of PhD scientists on there that I would pay attention to. Halo CME, that's his handle. He posts a lot of good stuff. Christian Mostel, Erica Palmerio. There's a lot of people. I'm still getting my PhD, so I sort of gravitate towards the aurora chasing side of things. But I do my best with, just more or less alerting people on what's going on. I have some experience with the actual analysis, but as all good scientists will say, you always have to put your disclaimers. Maybe, if. I expect this to happen. You never talk in absolutes, but yeah, there's a lot of great people on Facebook, social, all sorts of social media channels who are doing these space weather, analyses and sort of interpreting the models.
So you guys deal with the same issue we deal with in weather, uncertainty, and communicating uncertainty can be hard. But anyway, Benson, we've got to take a quick pause for email. Then we're going to come back with picks of the week here, and we'll wrap this thing up. So quickly, let's see if we can dive into the good old email inbox. Just maybe there's something in there this week.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
We do. We have some stuff to talk about here as we start off a brand new year. First of all, we've gotten a lot of great feedback on having Tom Skilling on. We heard from Sean in Athens, Georgia. I want to thank you for bringing on Tom Skilling for your latest WeatherBrains episode. What a true gentleman and lover of what he does. It was a joy to watch and look forward to other episodes. He was amazing. So glad we were able to have him on. And to chat about what the next phase of his life is going to be after retirement. Thank you to Steve Holmes for sending us a 6-day SPC outlook panel from a few days ago that had nothing on it. That's now changed, though, as we now have stuff on the 6-day to 7-day panel. And I could get a little bit active through the next few days and then also early next week. So that'll be fun to kind of monitor. Want to ask a question from our friend James Lewis, who is also providing my pick of the week. So I'm very happy that he wrote tonight. Are there any examples in meteorology that the panel knows of where an instrument or index or product was designed with one purpose in mind, but wound up being more useful for another? Can anybody think of something? I could not.
Say that one more time. Let me be sure I've got the question right here.
Are there any examples in meteorology that the panel knows of that there is an instrument or an index product, it was designed for one purpose, but wound up being more useful for another?
Would correlation coefficient qualify for that? As
I was thinking some of the dual pole radar products.
I was thinking just radar in general.
Yeah, there you go.
From Nazi bombers to tornadoes.
Yeah, that was a good leap.
That's good. That'll work. All right, and our last one is a New Year's resolution from Catherine Ebling about, I've never been big on making New Year's resolutions, but I think this year I'll make it an exception. This year I want to encourage more to make a disaster plan, to build their disaster kit and discuss their plans and weather safety with family and friends. Nature has been throwing a lot of surprises, and our best defense is to be prepared. I hope others will choose to make the same resolution, so when severe weather strikes, maybe there will be fewer injuries and less loss of precious life. Wishing all a happy, safe, and healthy 2024. God bless. Thank you, Catherine. That is a great New Year's resolution. I think everyone should follow that as well. So if you have any emails or advice or picks of the week or jokes and riddles you'd like to throw our way, email at weatherbrains.com. And we start the newsletter back up this week. It'll come Thursday morning into your email inbox. And it is Mr. Span with the article this week. So he's going to start us off on a great note this year. Back to you, James.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
So we're doing the show here on the 2nd of January, 2024. So, Jen, the buzz is all over the socials about snow. And so, and you know, it's El Nino, and these things are just lined up like trains on a track, and you can see them coming. So what's your story there for the weekend system? How much will you be buried in snow, or is it going to rain?
I think we'll see snow. I don't think we'll be buried though, but temperatures are trending a little bit colder, and I am north of Columbus. So it's, you know, it's kind of like anywhere along I-70 is always that line where he's like, if you're along I-70 or south, you're going to get rain or a mix. And then if you're north of I-70. So I think we're going to be trending more toward snow, maybe a few inches. We've not seen much. Even last winter, we really didn't see a whole lot. So I think it'll probably be something that could cause some issues on the roads. And then I was looking at stuff heading east, and it looks like it could be a little snarly there. You know, eastern PA, Pennsylvania could see a little bit more. So it's going to be an interesting kind of watch here. And again, we've really not seen a whole lot in this area. So I think people will need to be paying attention.
And then we have the one next week, you know, early next week. That'll be another interesting situation for maybe our friends in Chicago and Milwaukee and places like that. So we'll see. We don't have Neil on the show tonight. He's our East Coast correspondent. So let's go west. We'll start with Tulsa. James A., what you got? Floods, hail, snow, ice, nothing?
Absolutely nothing. We've got some showers on Friday. Temps certainly look too warm for any kind of impactful winter precip. I'm sure somebody will see a snowflake or two when it starts and when it ends. And then the same story looks like it'll happen again Monday. So I'm all good with that. I don't need to spend 24 hours at work dealing with snow.
Rick, how about you and Norman?
Yeah, pretty similar. I know people are really getting itchy, antsy to want to see snow, talk about snow, hear about snow. Not me. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a case where we're just going to have these systems coming through every few days, and if the temperatures line up just right, maybe northern Oklahoma, far northwest Oklahoma could see some snow a little bit, but not anything to get too excited about. And that's going to be the pattern here for a while.
Just seems like kind of a typical El Nino type winter for at least us down here in the lower latitudes. And the good thing down here, we're expecting rain amounts of maybe up to 4 inches here with these multiple systems over the next 7 days. And we've still got drought conditions here. So 4 inches of rain is very beneficial. So that's the deal with the weather. Let's do picks of the week. Got to wrap this thing up. We'll go around the horn. Everybody's going to share something weather related or aurora related or anything we've been talking about tonight. So let's go to Jen for her pick of the week. Jen, go for it.
I have the best one of the year so far, and it's from our friend James Lewis. I was going to take the foghorn tonight because I didn't have one, and so he sent us the link to Wikipedia of what the foghorn is, and so I thought that was perfect. And so it's about the foghorn or fog signal, and it's a device that uses sound to warn vehicles of navigational hazards such as rocky coastlines or boats of the presence of other vehicles or vessels in foggy conditions. Or it's what happens when we don't have a pick of the week, but now I have one. So unless James just wants to play it because we haven't heard it, my pick of the week is the Wikipedia article on the foghorn.
Well, if we're going to talk about it, we have to play it.
Let's play it. Excellent. That's awesome.
There you go. Now I feel better. So my pick of the week, it's a tweet from a meteorologist about a Newsweek article. The headline of the Newsweek article says, winter weather alerts issued for multiple states as snow tornado forms. You can't make this stuff up. So apparently a Newsweek, and I think isn't this a credible publication? This isn't, the National Enquirer, the weekly world news here. I mean, this is like Newsweek magazine. They saw some jabroni, with some outrageous tweet. And I would assume this person's just, not a meteorologist. And hello, I'm from Newsweek. Would you do an interview with me? And that's the article that came about. It's almost like something from The Onion here. But anyway, we live in strange times. But that'll be my pick of the week. It's a tweet about that bizarre situation. All right, Rick Smith, what you got for us this week?
Well, if you can't get enough of the long-range outlooks of doom and gloom, and you want something a little bit more down to earth, my pick of the week is from the Climate Prediction Center. They have a 8 to 14 day hazards outlook, which talks about snow and any other kind of hazardous terrestrial weather, and a little bit more well thought out and considered than a lot of the stuff you see on social media.
That's a good starting point for people that want to look in the longer range. That's a great pick. And again, we'll have all these links up on weatherbrains.com. James A., before you get on television, I know you got to go. What you got for us this week?
I have a picture from the Goodyear blimp of the sunset over the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. And I won't mention that there might have been a football game there either, because that's probably a little bit of a sore subject. But absolutely gorgeous sunset. It is the best, absolutely most beautiful college football venue there is.
No question.
I have never been. I need to go sometime. All right. So, Vincent, we have stalled long enough. We're going to give you the floor and give us something really cool that people can enjoy.
All right. So, yeah, I was thinking about it. The one thing that's I think really cool right now is, the sun's waking up. So I would suggest people to check out, there was a solar flare that just happened a couple days ago. It was an X5. So it's the strongest class of solar flare. It's a logarithmic scale, and it's the strongest solar flare that's occurred in the past 6-7 years since 2017. So Google the X5 flare. There's a great movie. It looks like a big flash bulb going off on the sun. And there was a coronal mass ejection with that may graze Earth in the next day or so. So we'll see if that brings auroras down to mid-latitudes. But it was sort of on the limb. So I think the eruption's mostly headed away. But that's my pick of the week.
It's a great pick. Excellent. We'll put the link up on weatherbrains.com. Bill Murray, go. Your turn.
Yeah, James, my picks are going to be all these incredible guests that are coming up. Tomas Pusic from the European Severe Storms Laboratory will join us next Monday night when we get back to our Monday night schedule. I thought there for a minute we might have to move to Tuesday because of that football game last night, but alas, that was not to happen. But anyway, Randy Cerveny will join us on the 15th talking about his new book that's coming out. We had scheduled Mike Gramillion, but he's got something important of national security to deal with on that week. So we're going to push him hopefully to the following week and swap him with Mark Sudduth. And maybe Mark can join us on the 22nd. But we've got lots of great guests coming up. I'm still got those fingers crossed. Tom Grazoulis on February 26th. Jen, I don't know if our East Coast correspondent Greg Carbon's going to be able to pull this off. I think you've got the most influence, so you really need to get cracking on that, because I'm counting on the 26th of February. And James, that's just some of the great guests that are coming up here in the next few weeks. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's see, Vincent, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, is there a way they can follow you on social media? What's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way is on Instagram or Twitter, Threads, TikTok, whatever you want. It's just my first and last name, Vincent Ledvina. Otherwise, my website's theauroraguy.com. And a fun thing that happened today is I launched the second edition of my ebook. So it's completely free. All you have to do is just sign up for my email list. I don't spam out or anything. I just release the Aurora alerts, and that's all. So it's a good thing to get subscribed to. And the ebook is 64 pages. So it's a long one. And it's all about aurora chasing. So yeah, head over to theauroraguy.com and learn some more about the auroras.
It's the deal of a lifetime there. Come
No
on, that's good
kidding.
stuff. That's outstanding. So if you're new here, we typically do the show Monday nights. We have been off here for the last week or so, but we're back on the Monday night schedule starting next week, and we'll be on Monday nights until June. We're typically live at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on the WeatherBrains YouTube channel, youtube.com/WeatherBrains. But we know most of you listen to the show. However you watch or listen, thank you. And if you want to get in touch with us, our email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. God bless. It was a great show tonight.
Awesome.
Vincent, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you
for
Vincent.
reaching
Yeah,
out,
thank you.
Vincent. That was
Vincent,
great
this was a
timing.
great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
From tornado
Thanks, everybody.
chasing to aurora chasing. We
Yep.
covered it all tonight.